myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot see.
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters, start of a new week. You join me and Joe Walker, Borough Mag, for a Monday club. How are you, mate?
I'm all right. Yourself?
Very good, mate. Good to see you. Plenty to talk about, of course, on this show. We will be looking back each week on the game at the weekend. Obviously, transfer window is still open, so a vast part of the show will be dedicated to that. And there was breaking news, Joe, before we came on air. You spotted it on Sky, which I'd clearly missed.
Yes, interesting one, Steve. Linked apparently a £17 million bid's gone in for, I think it's João Pedro of Watford. This lad, actually, when you talk about the kind of triangle of Watford forwards, is often the one that doesn't get spoke about that often. Obviously, we've been linked with Emmanuel Dennis. He gone to Nottingham Forest at the weekend. Apparently, Watford have turned the bid down. Whether that means we'll be going back, we'll offer more money. And it's really interesting because just frantically looking through kind of Twitter feeds and such, like just before we came on air, how split the fan base seems to be. Some people are saying, great, we're actually tabling bids now. I know Sky Sports don't always get it right, but they often don't, report things, particularly on their transfer show, without any kind of research or any credence being done. So, but the fans are interestingly kind of going, how do we go from Darwin Núñez and players like this to a championship striker, who was hardly prolific, playing for Watford in a relegated side. He did score at St James's Park, actually, I seem to remember, in what was a woeful game. But one to watch, and maybe, just maybe, we are getting into the last week of the last couple of weeks of the transfer market. So maybe, just maybe, we're starting a bid for strikers now. So watch this space.
Yeah, interesting, that situation. We'll keep an eye on it, and as we will with all the transfer ins and outs at Newcastle. Any sign of Neymar, mate? Because, of course, we have been linked with him, of course, early in the window.
Not yet. I haven't seen him yet. Steve, but...
He hasn't been down your local chippy in Middlesbrough, keeping out the way of the limelight in Newcastle?
No. I don't know if Parmos have got that far yet.
Okay, well, you never know. We can keep dreaming of Neymar. Before we look into the other potential transfer targets, let's just quickly look back on the result at the weekend. 0-0 at Brighton. I always like to let the dust settle these days before I make a comment on social media. I don't like to have a knee-jerk reaction after I come out of the game or after I've watched the game. I thought it was, wasn't a great performance by Newcastle. However, there was a sturdiness there. There was a defensive metal there, and they came away with a point. And I think there'll be a few teams who will come a cropper at the Amex this season. So for Newcastle to play Brighton early, clearly when they're on form, to come away with a point, come away with another clean sheet, I was happy, mate. I was really happy. And if it hadn't been for, the fact that Callum Wilson had his goal choked off, and having watched the full game now, the fact we should have had a penalty, and Newcastle could have probably done one of my favourite things, the smash and grab. But, look, stats tell you everything. Brighton had the upper hand. Newcastle, lucky to come away with a point. But I was happy. 4 points out of the first 2 games, 2 clean sheets. It only gets better if you win both games. Yeah.
I think the general consensus on Friday night on the Amigos, Steve, wasn't it? I think we all said we'll settle for a draw. And I think it's a good point. I think it's a very good point because, yes, they might not be classed as one of the top Premier League sides, but I tell you what, they're a bloody good side. And Graham Potter's got them playing incredibly well. They've lost a couple of big players. But, we've got to hold our hands up and say we were second best on Saturday. But if you'd have offered me a point, Steve, and like you say, a clean sheet as well, and particularly you got the team news and you're thinking, well, it's got to be the same as last week, of course. And then, dear me, Matt Targett's injured. And you're thinking, oh, now what we're going to do is this dumb it? Are we going to put Trippier on the other side? And what he did was he made a brave call. He put Dan Burn there, who has played there for Brighton in the past. And allegedly didn't put a foot wrong, Steve, from what I can gather. Couple off the line, we were fortunate. After the week Nick Pope had on Twitter, of course, it was only right that he just had a worldie and made some great saves. He made one down from a header down to his left-hand side. And I thought it was a fantastic save, Steve. So, listen, 2 games played, 4 points in the bag. We've played an unknown, newly promoted side and a very, very good Brighton. So, we'll take that all day long. Big game coming up on Sunday, which obviously we'll talk about as the week goes on matters. But I'm happy, Steve. I think I'd have took 4 points from them 2 games. So, we've got to be pleased with that. Interesting bit, though, I guess what people are saying is, I watched the highlights on Match of the Day, and they didn't even put the Callum Wilson goal incident on the highlight reel. It didn't even make the highlights. Obviously, Alan Shearer said it wasn't a foul and it was a goal, of course, but it wasn't to be. But maybe highlighted yet again why Eddie Howe's done what he's done with the goalkeeper in the back 4. But maybe it just highlights that, yes, strikers are an absolute priority, not only for Callum Wilson getting injured, but, we do need to score goals, Steve, and we need to create more goals. So big week or so coming up in the transfer market, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Other clubs will be making the move as well. And, players going to another club frees up the opportunity for others to leave. So, it's an interesting couple of weeks. And that's what we said. Mitch and Stu both, still seem to think that our transfer record will be broken at least once, if not twice, before the end of the window. I'm not sure about that. I'd love to think that we're right. We will wait and see what happens. And guess the big photograph doing the rounds over the weekend was this one. Dad and Amanda, of course, guests of Chelsea. And I think the big thoughts were, not what Amanda's drinking, but was, who's she looking at? And is there a deal being done? Or is this one of the big 6 reaching out and saying to Newcastle, look, come on in? It was an interesting image to come out of there. And there was some pretty famous folks sitting in the box, to be perfectly honest. Mitch and Stu last night said that this is what happens. These kind of people entertain these kind of people in boxes. It should, nothing too much should be thought about it. But clearly, when we know that Newcastle are in the market for players that are available and Chelsea need to offload, there must have been some talk about, some of those potential players come to Newcastle, whether on loan or permanent deals.
It's an interesting one, isn't it, mate? My first thought was, without pouring cold water on it, was, is this what we do now? Do we just turn up at matches with Amanda Staveley and say, by the way, can we sign Hudson-Odoi? I'd like to think that was Dan Ashworth's job. But it was interesting, wasn't it, that they were there, Steve? And I think, if we rewind the clock back over the last 2 years, this was one of our so-called cartel clubs. They're under new ownership now, and next thing you know, Amanda and Merdad are down there in hospitality, and so hopefully, there's something about some relationships being built there. I would like to think, we've got, we're going to be on the air 3 hours tonight going through all the Chelsea squad that we've been linked with over the last 24 hours.
Let's go through them one. Let's go through them one by one, mate. Because you're right. I can think of 4 straight away off the top of my head, and in no particular order. You've mentioned Callum Hudson-Odoi. What's your thoughts on him, mate?
Steve, this lad burst onto the scene, didn't he? If you remember a few years ago, he looked absolutely incredible when he came. He's only 21 years old, but already managed over 100 games for Chelsea, 16 goals in that time in all competitions. He's got good pedigree. He's got good calibre. He's played for England from the under-16s onwards, including 3 full caps. So he's absolutely no mug, let's put it that way. And do you know what? He's young and he's English and he's hungry and it's a World Cup year. So actually, if you're ticking our box of credentials, I guess this lad's ticking them all, really. Led to believe that we're potentially looking at a loan deal for him. But like him and the other players, I'm sure we're going to come on to, like you've just said. I think what I'm reading, if you read in between the lines, Chelsea are waiting to bring players in. So we have to think, well, who are they waiting for? And then who does that free up? But, you know, Adoy, Anthony Gordon, you know, we talked about Draxler. We've talked about all of these wingers, Steve. Clearly, there is an intention to bring a wide player in. And I tell you what, I think this lad gets me excited. I think it'd be a great signing, particularly if we can get him on loan. I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Next name, Conor Gallagher. Newcastle strongly linked with a permanent move for Conor Gallagher, not one on loan.
Yeah, I saw this abandoned figures of £40 million around for him. Again, 22 years old, can play through the middle or out wide. So I guess we're getting a bit of kind of everything here. Interesting thing about this lad, he's barely played for Chelsea. He's been out on loan since 2019. Charlton and Swansea, and then two kind of higher profile loans. One at West Brom where he played really well, and then last season he was on loan at Crystal Palace. And interestingly, with this lad, you know, he was either brilliant, scoring great goals and you know putting a real shift in, or he was non-existent. And again, been doing a little bit of homework today on him, and that comes across not only for the Crystal Palace fans that were talking about him, but also some of the Newcastle fans that were commenting on the potential to bring him in. So again, Steve, good pedigree. This lad's also been involved with England since he was 17. He knows what he's doing. He's played in the Premier League, played quite well for Crystal Palace. So again, certainly one that I wouldn't say no to.
Yeah, I've got to be honest, mate. You know, Conor Gallagher is a kind of player. It is a step up from what we have in midfield, and I think the potential of Anthony Gordon going there from Everton will free up that role for, and a potential for him to come to us. So Conor Gallagher is another one, in the pipeline. I mean, Newcastle interested in Gordon as well. I know some fans aren't particularly keen on bringing Gordon in. They don't feel he's any different to Elliot Anderson, and more emphasis on a striker, I guess, from our fan base on social media and those you speak to in the pubs and clubs around the ground. We need somebody who can score goals. And interesting point made in the chat there, I think it was by Michael Pomar. He says Bruno's worst game for us. It's a very high bar, but it did highlight how if teams stop Bruno, we don't have much more to us. We're crying out for another centre midfielder as well as attackers. And I think with the injury to Shelby, which we'll come on to, I'm sure, we are threadbare a little bit on creative players.
And I wonder, Steve, obviously with that injury to Shelby, the sense that you get with Joe Willock being in that lineup, don't forget Bruno. We brought Bruno in to be a holding midfielder. Apparently that's what he was. That's what he is. It's only that Eddie Howe's managed to push him in a more advanced position, and he's working his magic going forward. From what I can gather on Saturday, he was put in that hole. And obviously, then that nullifies our kind of our main attacking threat, or that little bit of magic. Because as much as I love Joe Linton, I don't think you're going to get that little creative spark. So again, I can see why I watched Arsenal Leicester and I saw James Maddison doing his thing, and I thought, yeah, I can totally see why we're linked with these type of players, Steve. So listen, Michael's seen it, everybody's seen it, I guess, who was watching the game. So I'm sure Eddie Howe and the gang on the board can see it as well. So
you get what you pay for. Madison's 80 million. If you want him, if you want world class, like a world class player, you have to pay big money. That's the difference. It's not a tune tax. It's common sense. If you want someone who's going to be able to come in, fit straight into your team, adapt, score goals, create goals, you need to put in the money for the likes of Tielemans and Maddison. You need to test the water. And Ben Jacobs has said more than one occasion on this show, the first out the door at Leicester will be Tielemans. He said that Tielemans is the one that Leicester are prepared to let go in that midfield. They don't want to let Maddison go. Maddison, if he can get a pay deal, will probably stay. And Harvey Barnes, he's not much different to what we've got. So I think Tielemans will be the one to concentrate on, but it doesn't seem as if the club are willing to continue that. And I think lots of us would prefer to see maybe the Brazilian connection continue and go for Paqueta. So, we said it at the start of the programme, it's going to be an interesting end to this transfer window. Michael again makes a point, the lack of players that can come off the bench and make an impact is also worrying. That's one of the reasons why I wouldn't start Willock. He was invisible for much of the game. He's an impact sub. And again, Michael, I wouldn't disagree with you. Willock, was superb when he came in on loan. In the second spell that he got in the team, the first spell he was in the team, couldn't hit a barn door. He then hit that 7-goal run, which he was fantastic. And then since then, he has flattered to deceive whenever he's had a chance in the team. And I think it was much of a surprise to me as anyone when he was, given that start last week against Nottingham Forest. So yeah, it is interesting, and we will see. I think there's a lot of ins and outs still to happen at Newcastle, and we will just see what happens. Anyway, continuing on the Stamford Bridge potential exodus towards St James's Park, and we have this man, Christian Pulisic, who again finds himself on the bench, not starting, came on as a sub at the weekend. Thoughts on him, Joe?
Yeah, this is a player, isn't it? As much as I like Hudson-Odoi, as much as I like Conor Gallagher, I think if I was given the opportunity to sign any of them three, it would be Pulisic a whole day long. For me, Steve, American player. Again, can play in that central midfielder. You can see him there with the number 10 shirt on. But also is known to kind of drift out on that right-hand side. Played for Borussia Dortmund, plenty of kind of success there in Germany. Came over to Chelsea for big money. 19 goals in 76 games for someone who doesn't regularly start and has a midfield position. You could argue that's not bad, and particularly when you look at the goal scoring returns for the midfielders that we've got. I think actually it's very, very good. Played over 50 times for his country. So if there's anything in this, but it's interesting, isn't it? We can have Odoi on loan, but we'll sign Gallagher for 40 million. But we might be able to loan Pulisic as well. So again, it just makes me think, and I don't know what the rules are, Steve. I assume there's rules about the number of players you can loan off one team and all the rest of it, I'm guessing. So would it Gallagher? Would it be Pulisic? Arguably, you could say they are similar ilk. They are similar players vying for that position, which is probably why Gallagher doesn't get anywhere near the Chelsea first team if this lad's on the bench. But again, we're talking about that step up in quality, aren't we? We're talking about fantastic footballers with clear Champions League, pedigree. So this would be a great signing, absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree. I'd love to see him in a black and white shirt, loan or permanent, whichever. But again, it's good to be linked with these players. And I think, if that was just a social where Amanda and my dad went down to Chelsea and had a few drinks at the invite of the Chelsea owner, fantastic. They live in London. There's no surprise that they can casually go over and do that. And it's great if nothing else comes of that, other than a relationship is built up by between them and Chelsea. I think that's fantastic. It's a positive, and from our perspective, it's good to see bridges being built, and long may it continue. So we'll see. Conor Gallagher. We
always said, mate, didn't we? We always said when we talked about that cartel and how we had to smash them and how we had to kind of, but actually, those football clubs have got some very, very good players. Look at the three players we've just talked about there. Brozier being the fourth one that is still hasn't gone away, still potentially linked with him, with the forward there. You need relationships with these people. So whether it be Liverpool, whether it be kind of Spurs, there will be footballers, Manchester City, there will be footballers in those squad that will make Newcastle United better. And if what we need to do is build some bridges and repair some kind of fractured relationships, no matter what we think now, we've got our takeover, so let's move forward. And I think if Amanda's going to go there and have half a bottle of wine and enjoy the day out, I'm hoping, and I'm sure what she did was, I'm sure she looked and thought, do you know what? I can't believe he's paid $4 billion for this when we got Newcastle for $350 million. From that business perspective, maybe we're looking at Chelsea. Maybe she was there signing Harry Kane. Who knows?
Good one. Barry Hogan says Conor Gallagher would be a great signing, but still need a forward. Need someone who could cover for Wilson. Paqueta would be mint as he can play almost anywhere, and a forward on loan. Kenny, We're going to give this a readout, South Shields mag, because he says his new top arrived today and it's in perfect condition and delivered in 2 working days. That's 2 working days. It had Castoria in the wrapper, so that has to be a Castoria record. Well done,
I
Kenny.
don't believe him. Don't believe him.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, you've got to give them praise when they get something right. It hasn't been very often by all accounts from listening to various people. But yeah, well done to Castoria for getting Kenny his top on time. Steve Middlemas says it's the Ashworth effect selling project reportedly to players. Yeah, might well be. Alan Thompson says, after listening to Everton fans, Joe and Steve, they do not rate Gordon. No better than Almiron, beats players but no end product, and would gladly let him go. Chris, UK Essex, says Maddison for 80 million or Jesus and Sterling for the same. No matter how good he is, he's not worth double those players with only 2 years on his contract. 2, yes. It's wages, isn't it? Wages that people get. Mind, watching Gabriel Jesus in an Arsenal shirt now, he's a different player. He's a different player than when he was at Man City, isn't he? And I mean, you're just looking at him thinking, wow, it's like a throwback to Thierry Henry, some of the goals and some of the sublime stuff he's doing. But I'd love to have had him, but we're not at that level yet.
No. But that's the thing, though, Steve. You're talking, aren't you? You know, the players that were linked with people like Jesus. There are players out there who sit on the fringes of these clubs, these big clubs, not just in England, but right across Europe and probably the world, where if you can get hold of them somehow and bring them in, you know, you just unlock megastars. And I think personally, interestingly, on Arsenal, I think they're going to do well this season. I thought they did well last season. But I tell you what, bringing players like that in, Steve, they look a completely different animal. So, but I agree with you. We're not there. We are not there. We are not, you know, I think he was one of the players we were linked with very early on in the summer, wasn't he? And you're just thinking they are like absolute, like, cloud cuckoo land signings for us, like Darwin Núñez, for example, you know, linked with Newcastle, ends up going to sign for Liverpool for 90 million or whatever it was. So yeah, give it a couple of years for players like that, Steve. But there are players out there. And that Chelsea squad, you know, the Manchester City squad, maybe Amanda and Murdad were thinking, bloody hell, we've just rattled off 4 Chelsea reserves, if you like, if there's such a thing now. Certainly squad players. Wouldn't it be nice, going back to the point about Newcastle's bench, wouldn't it be nice that we could turn around and think, who am I bringing on? Adoy or Pulisic or Gallagher? Or that's where Newcastle United need to be. So, yeah, 3 years, we'll get there.
Tielemans, 25 million. Paqueta, 45 million. Loan, Gallagher, Pulisic shall say no to Hudson, Barkley. But if not others come, there may be a loan in this too. What about Ziyech? I will take Ziyech. One loan, says Stefan. Again, Stefan, some great points. I mean, it's whether the board, the powers that be at Newcastle are feeling the same. And just when we think we're going for one person, we seem to go for another. And I think a lot of that was what Mick Lowes has said. A lot of the journalists haven't a clue. They don't know who we're going for. So it's pure speculation. We've got a lot of in the know accounts on the Newcastle timeline who muddy the waters by simply putting out whatever they wanted to say. In the know accounts generally know nothing, very little. They may get the odd tip off, they might get the odd thing right, but in general, they know nothing. They're cloudy the waters. And this is why, if you go back to when we first started talking about doing this transfer show, I said it would be a nightmare. For me personally, I always used to wait until the player had the shirt up. But because I do a podcast now, I feel like I've got to do this. And this is the first transfer window in 14, 15 years that I can honestly say I've paid complete attention to all the way through. It's done me head in, Joe. It's absolutely done me head in. And I gave in. I think we gave in at something like 642 players Newcastle have been linked with. It's absolutely crazy, mate. It's bonkers, but it's great. And the other side of it, to be linked with these players, and that's the difference. Kirk's going on about valuations. He says valuations are lines in the sand. If a car salesman have a valuation of £300 for a banger, it can change. If you barged in and bartered £600, the new value would be £600. Who stated 80 million for Maddison? Good point.
Yeah, very good point. And what you said, Steve, was, you've got to test the water, but actually how much is too much? And that's a question for everybody, I guess. We raved about James Maddison, and the thought of us, potentially bringing him in was, it's fantastic. I'd love to see it, but yeah, how much is too much? Because I'm sure if the financial fair play and all that allows, yeah, we could go out and bid 120 million for him. I'm sure with PIF would sort that out for us. The question is he worth that? The problem with looking for value, of course, is we're going to run out of time in the window. So you're playing that fine line, aren't you, between let's not get our pants pulled down, let's not pay over the odds, but we do need to sign someone of international class. And that's where the rub comes from. So, would you pay 80 million for him? I think 60, 65 is more likely. 80 seems quite high. And maybe that's us smashing our window twice, as Stewie Penman said. Maybe it's 40 million and another 40 million on the same player. We'll see.
Have you looked at the odds? Barry Hogan's asking. Is there any clue at the bookies, or is that just are they based? Are the odds for players potentially coming to clubs based on the speculation in the papers?
Yeah, pretty much, Steve. Yeah. So Barry, I do keep an eye on it. Yeah, I do keep an eye on it. But again, if there's if you pick the book up in the morning, they'll run the book overnight. And of course now Callum Hudson-Odoi will be odds on, and so will Pulisic, and so will the lad from Watford. So yeah, the bookmakers are very much like the journalists in many ways, particularly when it comes to transfers. Who's feeding who what information, how much of it is really close to the bone, or how much of it is just wild speculation in the hope that we all go and stick 20 quid on Conor Gallagher signing for Newcastle. And of course, the only person who knows that that's going to happen, will be Dan Ashworth and Conor Gallagher's agent, I guess. And if they're not giving out the way to lad Brooks, they're just guessing. Any odds on Keith Patterson getting a round in before the end of the season? Absolutely no. No one be stupid enough to offer that as a bet, Steve, because it's not happening. Okay, just Steve Hasty was asking. Alan Thompson says Jeezy will not score more than Wilson this year, but then again, I put £10 on Man United to beat Brentford on Saturday, so what do I know? Wow, Man United, bottom of the league, mate. Bottom of the league. They're not just bottom of the league, either. They're absolutely down and out, Steve. And do you know what? I was watching them. We watched them at St James's Park back end of last season and in the 1-1 draw. And I thought we absolutely slaughtered them. I thought they were there to get absolutely battered. We were brilliant. And you know what? They don't look any different. In fact, they looked a bit worse. You've got Bruno Fernandes. You're talking about footballers on inflated prices and inflated wages. Looked absolutely just not interested. Marcus Rashford, appalling. Ronaldo just stood with his arms up in the air. And I tell you what, we mentioned him earlier. If we've signed Dan Burn for £12 million, and I genuinely mean this, and they've paid £80 million for Harry Maguire, Steve. Honestly, they're a football club. They're a football club in disarray, mate. And overrated players on lots and lots of money, no teamwork, no team ethic, changing the managers every 5 minutes, and an ownership that's absolutely hated. Reminds me of a certain football club that we follow. So they need to be careful, my friend. They need to be very, very careful. And where do you start with that? Well, what do they do? And then he's talking about bringing in kind of, Arnautovic, who's about 39-year-old, the ex-West Ham player. I think they've got trouble, mate. I think they're in big trouble. I mean, people keep pointing out that I look a bit like the manager. I'm going to have to be careful if I go down to Manchester this season. I might get lynched outside the ground. So I might have to wear a disguise, get myself a wig for the trip to Old Trafford this year. Lots of comments coming in about you can only have one loan from like each club. Right. That is true. Yeah. So we couldn't loan, Odoi and Gallagher, or Gallagher and Pulisic. Would have to, buy one and loan one. But I genuinely think this business. Yeah, I think there's business to be done with Chelsea. Yeah, definitely, Steve, definitely. And potentially that might be why, there's allegedly money coming for Gallagher and we'll have the other one if we can get him on loan. The thing is about Odoi, of course, is he spent the back end of last season out injured. Quite a few injuries apparently, but there was quite a serious, I think it was his Achilles last season, Steve. So again, maybe that's more reason. I don't know whether Chelsea will want to let him go to try and get some game time and build his fitness back up, or we stay well clear and we stick our eggs in the Pulisic basket.
Yeah, breaking news from Kenny Ransom. Bet365 have stopped taking bets on Keith Patterson getting a round in. So, yeah, just confirming what Joe said earlier. Mark Todd says, the transfer window's done me head in. I want to enjoy the journey, as Mitch said, but I want it over now. It's so bloody frustrating. And it echoes the point that's been made by Andy. He says, for me, the odd thing is it just feels different at the moment. At the start of the window, we felt controlled in what we were doing. It feels a bit scattergun right now. And yeah, I think I can understand people feeling like that because people felt we were in control of the transfers, etc. But, you know, we're not at the end of the day. We just have to sit and wait. And there'll be a different game being played now. We've got Dan Ashworth in there who's now negotiating. It's not me, Dad and Amanda going out there. And I'm sure they have the say, they have the part Eddie Howe's involved, but Dan Ashworth's in control now. We've brought him in to do this job. And the same when Darren Eales starts on the 22nd of August, somebody might make that point.
Yeah. All Darren Eales has to do is make sure there's brown ale in the bar, and that's all he doesn't have to do anything else, Steve. The interesting bit about that is, yeah, it does feel really scattergun, and it does feel like we're just getting linked with everybody. But who's doing the linking? It's Fleet Street. It's not all, you know. It's not the football club. I'd like to think that these are top executives, Steve. You know, these are trillionaire business people. I hope they're not running round in circles in the boardroom at St. James's Park thinking, you know, God, we need to, where's Hamza Chowdhury? We just need to bring somebody in, you know. I would like to think there's a plan. And that's the bit. The frustration is, you know, tomorrow's another day. There'll be another Chelsea player who we haven't talked about. You know, someone mentioned Ziyech there earlier. You know, there'll be Man City players that all of a sudden we're getting linked with. So, yeah, where does the scattergun come from? It comes from the journos because they've got, you know, there's nothing else to write about.
Yeah, it drives people up the wall. I mean, me and Mick Lowes have had words over this on more than one occasion over the last few weeks. And yeah, he is right. He is right what he says. 100% he is right. So, look, from my perspective, you know, I just want to see these players get across the line. I'm sure we'll get them. Patience is a virtue. And look, if we don't bring anybody else in between now and the 1st of September, will this squad go down? No, it won't. Newcastle will not be, you know, troubling the top 6 with this squad or the top 8. They may, depending on results, get a top 10 finish. But there's another transfer window in January, which will be different again because the season will have had a break, will have restarted, will be into January. But people will still move. There will be contracts that will be coming to an end in the summer and people will want to get rid. You know, there will be some players, clubs that need different types of players. There will be business to be done. So there's another transfer window in January, folks, and we won't have long to wait. Thanks to the sponsors, Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website www.skipsandbins.com, easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks to Darren Baldwin Funerals. They are an independent funeral director. You can find them at 304 Old Durham Road, Gateshead. Telephone 0191 478 2730. Email Darren at darrenbaldwinfunerals.co.uk or go to the website darrenbaldwinfunerals.co.uk. Thanks to Garden of Healing Dispensary, CBD hemp and cannabinoid specialists. www.thegohd.com. If you're into that kind of thing, they've got a shop that's open on Nunn Street, Newcastle now. And Mr. Vicky's sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at the website mrvickies.co.uk or telephone 01 768 210 102. Away Day Clothing, big thanks to the guys there, and Media Arts for all the help with their video technology. Thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Walls and Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, nufcmatters.com. If you aren't a subscriber, why not? Hit the subscribe button, which is the NUFC Matters button in the bottom right-hand corner, and you can subscribe for free. Hit the thumb up to like the video, click share to your social media, and drop into the comments to speak to like-minded Newcastle fans or to put a question to me and Joe. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and the rest. Usually goes up 24 hours after the show is finished on YouTube. If you want to become a member, click join underneath the video, make a small donation, or you can become a fully fledged cult member by going to nufcmatters.com and clicking membership. What do you get for your money? You get a pen, you get a cup, you get a scarf, a membership card, and entry into the monthly draw. If you've got a smartphone, put your camera over the QR code. It will take you straight there. If you want something for now, and let's face it, who doesn't, get your car sticker by emailing john@nufcmatters.com and he will post you one out. We also support the food bank on this channel. NUFC fans, foodbank.co.uk is where you can make a virtual donation to the Matchday Bucket 365 days of the year. And don't forget, the guys and girls are outside St James's Park every home game if you want to go and drop off some cans, packets or whatever, every match day outside the ground across the road from Shearers. Peter Beardsley Soccer School is still going throughout the month of August. For more information, go to peterbeardsley.soccerschool.com. And little early shout for the Dog and Parrot on Saturday. The match between Newcastle and Manchester City is a 4:30 kickoff. I will be there with Malcolm at 2:45 before the game, and then after the game at 7 o'clock. Get yourself down. It's free entry. Kids are welcome. They do a canny burger and chips as well. So get yourself down there. And the Callum Wilson shirt is still up for grabs. Football prizes. I will stick that in the link if you want to have a go. It's $2.95 a ticket. Thank you to Football Prizes for chucking in this. You enter it as soon as all the tickets are sold. They draw it, and to get yourself on there. Got some amazing raffles on there. Okay, back to the transfer window. Where are we going to go next? Well, Benfica, we're in tune for the pre-season friendly, and we have been linked quite a lot with Goncalo Ramos. Roma are interested in the Benfica forward as well. This one seems to be getting a little bit colder, mate. It doesn't seem to be ramping up. Last week he was the one name that was getting chucked into the mix. This week seems to be less and less chance of him coming to Newcastle.
Interesting one, isn't it, Steve? So here we are again talking about a young 20-something. 12 goals in 36 games. Again, is that prolific or not? I'll be honest with you, I'll hold my hand up. I don't know a thing about Portuguese football, so I don't know, I couldn't comment on the quality of it. Current Portugal under-21 international. Apparently looking at money anywhere up to 40 million. But again, it's interesting, isn't it? We do our homework on all these players, and we're either loaning them or paying 40 million, like everybody's 40 million. So allegedly £40 million. Nottingham Forest have already had £30 million bid turned down for him, apparently. Clubs like Wolves interested in him. The interesting thing about Benfica is that they're still in the Champions League playoffs. So I'm guessing that if he's a main man and he's a regular starter for them, I assume that what they won't want to do is let him go before the Champions League playoffs are concluded. I think there's a game this week, and then I think the second leg is the 23rd of August. So I'm guessing that if they qualify for the Champions League, he's probably going to stay there because they're in it and we're not. If he doesn't qualify for the Champions League, maybe he'll want away, and maybe that's what Benfica are looking at. So I wouldn't envisage anything happening at all on this one. Unless they're the type of club that sells their centre forward in a Champions League qualifying week, which seems a bit silly.
Interesting point from Chris. He says, I feel like the FA and UEFA need to get together and agree to bring the end of the window forward to be held on the night before the season kicks off. Would be so much better for everyone. What's your thoughts on that, Joe? I wouldn't disagree with him. I think, it's a valid point, but I'm not sure that the UEFA and FIFA, etc., will get together and sort that kind of thing out.
I think it's when you're talking about UEFA, it's whatever Real Madrid and Juventus want, isn't it? That's what we do. The interesting bit in all of that is, do you remember the good old days when there wasn't a window and you could just sign people? Why don't we just do it like that? Because that was miles better. And do you know what? Signings had just popped up out of nowhere. We've signed Paul Bracewell, fantastic. Whereas now we've got this kind of, as you said, this 3 month and then this month in January of absolute torment. But yeah, I agree. I mean, is there a case to say that, you should have all your business done by kick-off and what you've got is what you've got? I think either way, whether they bring it forward, whether they move it back, if there's still going to be our window, then, fundamentally, it doesn't matter when it is, we're still going to have to go through this. The interesting bit is it must be one of the only or one of the very few professions in the world where employment law dictates that you can only move at certain times of the year, which again I find is really, really strange. If I wanted a new job, Steve, I'd apply for it and I'd stick my notice in and I'd go. So yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? The window, but I think I'm in the minority. I absolutely love it. I think it's class, and I love the whole final day, and I love the whole kind of. And this
you love it when Jim
White
White comes in his suit and he's like, I'm ready now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, we'll see. I think looking at the strike force, I think looking at the clear gaps, particularly out wide, and it's like we said last week. There's no point signing a centre forward if you've got no one to deliver the ball, and there's no point signing wingers if you've got no one to hit. So I can see why we're looking at a winger and a centre forward, and I have to have, Steve, we've got to have faith in the football club that they're gonna do it. They're gonna pull someone out the bag. It's the $1 million question, isn't it? Who?
Yep. In the words of George Michael, you've got to have faith. Barry Hogan says Hudson-Odoi been withdrawn from Chelsea's reserve game tonight due to transfer interest. Yeah. Alan Thompson says Stephen Joe, I just wish people would not get frustrated. It's not easy buying top players into the club, buying players for millions. The pressure is immense to get the right players. Tim Cairns says still awaiting your chili testing sessions for the Mantis panelists. Tim, we're still waiting for the sources. He's on holiday at the moment. He does say he's going to get us some though, so let's see what happens. Anthony says we have an opportunity this season to gate crash the top 6, but we need to spend big on Maddison, a winger, a forward who scores goals. And Julie, good evening. She says, I'll ask Keith Patterson on my birthday, Steve, to see if he'll dip his hands into his pockets then. BT says, I can't see Ramos until after Benfica play their second leg playoff against Dynamo Kiev on the 23rd of August. And Roger says, Chelsea crack from yesterday's talk has got another 3 or 4 rumours gathering momentum, or just what us lot want to believe, which is interesting. ASM, again, splitting the fan base as he does well. Darren Drinkeld, ASM must go. How he dived on Saturday was an utter disgrace. I'm not a big fan of him now. Never have been, to be honest. The second half of the Brighton match just shows how we need to strengthen. What do we lads think about ASM? I mean, look, we're in the same position. If we get rid of him, we have to replace him. And we already need a creative player in that midfield. And we already need a goal scorer. So you can't let ASM go unless there's 2 ready-made replacements coming in. For me, rumours are like... There's nothing coming out of the club at all. It's been, the person who was leaking stories is clearly gone, or the people who are leaking stories have clearly gone. I don't believe these rumours that he wants a pay rise and he's causing disharmony in the dressing room, etc. But that's the rumour that's going round. Who knows what is going on? Will ASM leave? I don't think he'll leave unless there's a couple of ready-made replacements coming in. What's your thoughts, Joe?
Everybody knows what I think. I'll firmly shake the hand of Darren, and that's the camp that I sit in, Steve. You know what I think of the bloke. Explosive, exciting, once every 4, 5, 6 games, and then I just don't see it, mate. And I could talk about him all night. Interestingly, though, one of the clubs that he was linked with, if you think about, was the club that we've been talking about all night, was Chelsea. So when you're talking about ready-made replacements and such, like, if there's an ounce of truth, and I don't think there will be, but if there's an ounce of truth in Tuchel wanting to take him there, is that what we've been talking about? So yeah, you can have him, but we'll have to have Perisic on loan with a view to buy and Conor Gallagher. Steve, I agree. I mean, we ain't going to get rid of him because he's what we've got. We don't have anything else if we take him out of the side. Let's be honest. But if we did have, if we ended up, I was looking at, remember when we were linked with Diaby, for example, and I was thinking, please, and not just to play with, it was actually he can play instead of. Because I've said all along, if someone's daft enough to give you 40 million for him, see you later, mate. I'd sell him tomorrow.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I agree. I hear that Rio Ferdinand's having a whip round to buy Man United as he believes there is no communication between the owners and fans. Sound familiar? Yeah, we've all had a laugh at that, Alan. We could dedicate a show laughing at Man United at this moment in time. I've got to be perfectly honest. Would you lads swap ASM for Callum Hudson-Odoi or Pulisic, or make weight in a multiple deal for Gallagher and Pulisic and Callum Hudson-Odoi? I think Joe would. Yeah, I mean, I'm just not sure that it'll come to that. I think we may get one player from Chelsea. I think we'll get another player from somewhere else. I'm not sure whether Eddie Howe is willing to let ASM go. Certainly not in this window anyway. Is ASM Eddie Howe's type of player? I don't really think so. I think Eddie Howe likes hard workers. He likes grafters. He likes people who can, put a shift in. Is ASM one of them? I think we all know the answer to that. So, yeah, I mean, and we haven't even spoken about Brozier. Brozier is another player who, again, is at Chelsea, who could fit the remit at Newcastle. He's a potential goal scorer for Newcastle. He could come. And, look, there's business to be done between Newcastle and Chelsea. What it is, how it happens, and whether it involves ASM. We can only give an opinion. We can't speculate. I still think ASM will be a Newcastle player come the 1st of September. But we will wait and see. Another player linked. This is just to add to the ever-growing list. Again, is a young striker from Marseille. 15 million euros. I love the name. Bamba Dieng. And, of course, the guy didn't play at the weekend. So lots of rumours circulating with regards to this player. One report suggesting that Nottingham Forest have been linked with him. I mean, who haven't Nottingham Forest been linked with, and who haven't Nottingham Forest bought this transfer window? But again, it's a French player, it's a French striker, and I guess the key phrase that we've used quite a bit tonight is he's young. And it clearly points to the fact that Eddie Howe's happy with Callum Wilson playing at the front of his formation, and that any player comes in will be there as cover and, come in if Callum Wilson is injured, and he'll have to earn his place in the team.
Yeah, I think you're right, Steve, and that's a really interesting point, isn't it, about Callum Wilson? And again, so there's people in the fan base, when are we going to spend some money? It's been a disaster this summer. When are we going to just go out and blow the lot and go nuts? But actually, for that caliber of player, they're not available. And we've got Callum Wilson, and what a fit Callum Wilson does is, whether people think whether people think he's the longer term answer or not. A fit Callum Wilson scores goals, Steve. So I can see why. Again, he is another young player. We talked about Etikite, we talked about God knows whoever else, all these young lads we've been linked with, and he is another one. And again, I love the fact that he didn't play for Marseille, therefore he's going to Newcastle United. So yeah, these are the type of lads. This is your squad. So whether it's this lad, whether it's Brozier, whether it would have been Hugo, I think you're right. I think a fit Wilson, unless there's unless we have the opportunity to sign, Lewandowski or Haaland, which clearly won't be happening, Wilson's going to be the man. So these young lads, Steve, but again, we talk about the price for the lad at Benfica. We're talking about big money for this lad. We were talking about a massive amount of money for Etikite. Would they be happy coming in and playing second fiddle to a 75% fit Callum Wilson? I don't think they would be, Steve. So I don't know. I'm torn between, just get someone in who would just be in and around the squad and be happy with a League Cup run, or shove Wilson out the way and spend 100 million on a centre forward if they exist. So it's a really, really interesting one, buddy. But I'm not going to pay much mind, although I agree with you, it's a fantastic name, isn't it, Bamba? But listen, it'll be what it'll be, Steve. I think we've been linked with too many of these lads, and not one of them have materialised for me to get overly excited.
Yeah, Bamba. It reminds us of University Challenge. We could probably come up with a song, we could do like the music every time he scores. That's a good idea, right?
Yeah, Johnny Allen, get the t-shirts ready as we speak.
I'd get hammered for that, to be fair, if I started that off. Bamba Dieng going to Fulham, says Jackie Nicholson. Where we'll see. Big thanks to Kenny as well for sorting out my problem about going to Old Trafford. He sorted a wig out for us there. Very good, mate. Very nifty. that wig. I'm sure nobody will spot us now, and I won't look like the Manchester United manager. Let's get back to a couple of points. This one was good from John. He goes, a new independent panel, including former players, to make judgment on all controversial incidents at Premier League matches. I haven't seen that, John. I'm not sure what the source is of that, but that would be interesting, wouldn't it? If they're going to have some kind of panel to look back retrospectively at some of these ludicrous decisions that get made, because the Premier League, even with the technology that they have, VAR is still littered with absolute humdingers of errors.
How independent though? For example, do you give Gary Neville a spot on that panel, or Jamie Carragher, and say a comment on Man United giving penalties away? So I'd be slightly dubious as to who these people are and where the biases are. But yeah, we've got to do something, haven't we? I'm led to believe that apparently they're going to run a pilot where you can hear the VAR conversations being broadcast live. So again, that'll be really interesting if that comes off. But yeah, we need something, Steve, because there's, VAR certainly hasn't been the answer to these controversies.
Alan makes a great point. He says, Trippier and Bruno were brought into the club very quietly with limited fuss. The Botman deal looked dead and buried, but we had a positive outcome. Let's just sit back and relax. Trolls says, we need a striker that's as good as Wilson to compete with him. Very good. Michael says, we are clearly looking for a younger player to back Wilson up, someone who's not going to demand first team football straight away. Kenny says, if Anderson gets the chance, I think he'll grow into a Premier League player. And Tim Cairns, you know what? I've always had a funny suspicion that this could happen as well, Tim. He says, one day I believe Harry Kane will wear the black and white. He's the nearest to Shearer. Yeah, I've always had a feeling that could happen at some point. ASM's not improving. He's going backwards. We need more consistent players. I know Flair players are in and out, but ASM is more out. We may have to keep until January or the summer as it is getting late, which I would agree with. And Professor Bananas says Goncalo Ramos will never leave for less than Fabio Silva. Additionally, Ramos is Portugal's under-21 starting centre forward. He performed at every level of Benfica's academy, and he wants to shine in the Champions League. Well, it's fair enough. It's a good point. It means Newcastle may not get a chance to sign him. But look, let's look at it. We're being linked with everybody. Daniel Levy would run that panel, says Richie.
I'm sure he would.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's some great points coming in. Michael as well says the first simple change I would make is if I was in charge of rules is exact timing. It's 2022, 2 halves of 40 minutes, each with a clock stopping when the ball is not in play. It would solve so many issues. We had this discussion probably about 12 months ago on the Amigos. I fear, Joe, doing stuff like that, altering the game to that level. We end up like American football at some point.
Can we just leave football alone?
Yeah,
I genuinely, we've got all these things now. I remember when you needed 2 people in the centre circle to kick off, and now we don't. I remember when we were only allowed 3 subs, and now we can have 25. I remember when we didn't have to have a video play back for 3 minutes, just so the linesman doesn't have to put his flag up. Yeah, let's just leave it alone and enjoy the game that we love, I think.
Yeah, stop messing about. That's what we're saying. Just leave it alone. Okay, Joe. I
sounded like my father there, didn't I?
Oh yeah, but this is what happens, especially when you end up on this show, mate. Because this is like the older podcast, if you like, the slightly older podcast, and from our perspective, we do end up sounding like we're dads or mums or whoever on here who we ended up following Newcastle because of them, and that's what happens. It's just the way it is. Okay, Manchester City, mate. We've got a big game coming up down there. It's St James's Park. It's a 4:30 kickoff. What's your views on that game? Because obviously we had a defensive shake-up, which you mentioned at the start of the show. Target, obviously with a slight injury, meant that Dan Burn had to fit in at left back. Botman came in and had an outstanding game by all accounts. Everyone who was there, said he was absolutely fantastic. So look, from our perspective, we know Eddie Howe's got a decision to make on that. If Target is fit, you would imagine Target comes back in. Does he revert back to playing Dan Burn at centre-half with Shaw? Does he go with 3 centre-halves and go with 2 wing-backs? What's your thoughts, early thoughts on that?
I said, if you remember me talking a few weeks ago, Steve, about how I used to play Football Manager and thinking about those three. If Botman's come in and had a great game, which I'm led to believe he has, what do you do now? Is this how you get Dan Burn out of the side, by moving him into left back? And then when your left back's fit, you say, sorry, Dan, you've lost your place now. It's a great problem to have. But for me, Botman plays because Botman's the man. Botman's the Rolls Royce, isn't he? And Botman's only going to get better. You're playing Manchester City, but I don't know, Steve. I don't know what you do. If you're asking me my opinion, I think what I said at the start was, and this is going to be horrendous because he's been brilliant, but it's Botman and Shah for me, as great as Dan Burn's been. So that's what I would do. But again, Dan Burn hasn't put a foot out of place. We've asked him to do something he's not particularly comfortable with on Saturday, and he's had a great game. I was reading there about his leadership and about the bollockings he was given, particularly to Sam Maximin. So that's a good thing. But listen, they are the best team in the world, aren't they? Or if they're not, they must be close to it. So there is an argument to say not that we should fear them anymore, but they came to our place last season when we were on the up and they absolutely tore us apart. It was easy for them. I watched them at the weekend there and they were just in absolute canter mode. And apparently Haaland barely touched the ball, but if it's not Haaland, it's Foden. If it's not Foden, it's Mahrez, it's De Bruyne. It's just never ending, Steve. So I'll go into it open-minded. It's quite nice. It's a free hit for us. We say that every time we play them. I'm not as fearful as I was if we were talking about Steve Bruce's Newcastle, because we just capitulate and get done 6 or 7. But we've got the ability to kind of give them a game, and I hope that's what we do. But I'll look forward to it. It'll be nice to see people like Haaland. You're watching the best players in the world, to all intents and purposes, aren't you? So let's see if Bruno can step up. Let's see what Botman can do. Hopefully Pope, because I'm sure Pope's going to be busy again. And why not? But again, Steve, it's what we do. And have we got the ability? We've clearly got the ability to keep it. Have we got the ability to threaten them? Because one of the best ways to play them is just to get into them. But if Sam Maximin's rolling around on the floor and not picking the right pass out, and Miggy just has one of his Miggy games, I can't see us really doing much, to be fair. But we'll see.
Hell of a week for Nick Pope, social media star at the end of the day, through tune polls and his good old sense of humour, sticking Nick Pope in the middle of a, in the middle of a poll that they were doing, and fair play. He's had some good publicity, has Liam, off the back of that. But Nick Pope, it was the big question before the season: would he oust Dubravka as number one? The performance in his first game, he was literally sitting having to do nothing. But on Saturday, he earned his pay. Is that him cemented now as the number one?
I think so, Steve. It's not particularly. I don't recall, many clubs in all the years I've watched football that kind of mess around with the goalkeepers. You tend to have one and they stay in until they either get injured or retire ultimately. This lad's been brought in to be number one. I think he alluded to that when he was talking about the conversations that he was having with Eddie Howe, how he was learning all about the football club from the likes of Kieran Trippier et al. So I think he's our number one, Steve. Arguably, you could say, is he England's number one? Is he better than Short Arms at Everton? Arguably. Then again, you're probably better than Short Arms at Everton. But I don't know, Steve. What grounds have we got to take him out? A little bit contradictory, like I said about Dan Burn, really, though. But what grounds have you got? We've played two clean sheets, an absolute worldie, man of the match, and he's got us a point. So he's going to stay there. He doesn't appear to be the type of lad that's going to start dropping loads of clangers and, we're going to worry about him like we did, unfortunately, when Woodman had a shot and when Carl Darlow had a shot. This lad's the real deal, isn't he? So, yeah, he's number one for me.
No, he definitely is. Good luck to Rachel tonight. She is back treading the boards. Rehearsal tonight. So best of luck with her and her play. I am back tomorrow night with Ben Jacobs. For the next 2 weeks, Ben will be appearing on a Tuesday. Ross Gregory having a well-deserved break. Just a reminder that Wednesday we'll see the lads back for Geordie's here. Geordie's there. Thursday night, as usual, Supermac and Gibble. And then Friday night will be the Amigos. Saturday, Mick Lowe's will return. And then Sunday will be a pre-record. It will be Those Were the Days, looking at season 1961 to 1962. If you haven't watched that series, please dip into it, because George Mitchell's recollection of those seasons and his information from those seasons and the amount of work he does to do those shows is fantastic. So if you haven't watched Those Were the Days, check the playlist out. Go and watch it. It's timeless. You can watch it at any time, but please at some point watch it, because you just forget some of the games of days gone by, and he just educates you, doesn't he, Joe?
Oh, fabulous, Steve. You know, one of those gentlemen, isn't he? You just listen to him all day long. And where he stores it and where he recites it from, I can't remember who we played on Saturday, never mind in 1962. So, yeah, absolutely. You know, he's a majestic fella. He's a great guy. And, yeah, everyone should watch it because it's brilliant.
Yeah, back 6 o'clock tomorrow. Joe, as always, thanks for giving up an hour of your day to have a chat about transfers, and I'll see you. I'll see you on Friday night if you can be bothered for Tune Tipster.
We'll see.
Take care, mate.
Take care, folks. See ya.